Welcome to the Brigham Young University Family History Library webinar series. Feel free to use the chat box for any questions during the presentation, and we'll make sure that they're all answered by the end. My name is Braden Knudsen. I will be your host for this webinar. Today we will be pleased to hear from James Tanner, who will be giving a presentation titled Google Searches at Warp Speed and Accuracy. James Tanner has a bachelor's degree in Spanish and a master's degree in linguistics from the University of Utah. He received a Juris Doctor degree in law at Arizona State University. He served for 2 years as an intelligence analyst and 39 years as intelligence analyst for the U.S. Army and 39 years as an Arizona trial attorney. He has previously owned a retail computer business and an Apple Macintosh software company. James has over 32 years experience in genealogical research and is an avid blogger of Genealogy Star blog and Rejoice and Be Exceeding Glad. He served for 10 years as a missionary at the Mesa, Arizona Family Search Library and is currently serving at the BYU Family History Library. He has presented at expos and conferences around the U.S. and Canada. James has 7 children and 33 grandchildren. So we'll turn the time over to James.
Whatever, kid. Howdy, this is James Tanner. I'd like to welcome you to another Brigham Young University Family History Library webinar. This series of webinars is being recorded and uploaded after the presentation to the BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is now has close to 200 videos, and we'll probably have a lot more by the time you watch this one. In addition, you might consider subscribing to the YouTube channel, in which case you'll receive a notification of all of the videos as they're uploaded. Some of these are short instructional videos, and some of them are these webinar recordings. Today we're going to be talking about Google searches, and I've added a tagline here at warp speed and accuracy. And one of the questions that I had when I got into into thinking about my way of doing searches on Google was analyzing exactly what I did. In addition, I consulted a lot of other references about Google searches and trying to understand how we optimized and how we actually did this in an efficient manner. So the question here is, what is the focus of this presentation? Well, first of all, we have to point out that we're being hosted here by the BYU Family History Library. So the focus of this is primarily searching for genealogical records. But I should point out that that's kind of incidental to the whole idea of doing searches on a large search engine website such as Google, because the principles apply to any topic. It doesn't really matter what you're searching for. You do the same thing searching for information about fishing or sports or any other topic that you might be interested in, equal to that with genealogical records. But during this presentation, we'll kind of focus on the genealogical records aspect, but certainly be reminded that the rest of the information applies to any of your searches for Google. Okay, so first of all, it helps to know what it is. Google is primarily a company, and the term is used pretty broadly. It's actually been kind of used as a verb, so people say they're going to go Google it or look it up on the internet. But the company itself is one of the larger companies and more highly capitalized companies in the world. But when we're talking about this Google, what we're talking about is a program that runs on the internet. It's hosted on probably an indeterminate number of servers that are owned by this Google company. And the program is called a search engine, which means that it's a specialized type of program that enables the user who is using a browser to do searches. So we can summarize by saying that Google is a company and an online general search engine. The term is pretty broadly used, however. Now I think the question comes up as to what is a search. This is kind of a complex issue. When we're searching for something, most people think of the terms of searching when they've lost something. In other words, you lose something and then you go search for it so you can find what it is you've lost. But I think computers have kind of turned this term around 180 degrees, and searching today is an activity that we go through to find things that we didn't know about previously or we didn't have previously. So we're actually trying to create or obtain information from huge online sources of information that refer to as databases or information that's sitting out there on the internet. And the reality of this is that there are now billions and billions of websites, and that these websites contain astonishingly large amounts of information that is readily available through searching using a program like Google. And now I have to mention at some point, of course, that there are other search engines out there. There's Bing, which is Microsoft's search engine. You have there Yahoo, and there's even one called Dogpile, and there's all sorts of others. There's I could go down and list. In fact, there's lists of search engines that you can find on Wikipedia online, and there are literally dozens, if not into the hundreds, of different search engines. Now, what makes Google the focus of so much attention is obviously that they are number one. They're the biggest and most used search engine in the world, and it's the number one most used website, if you look at it from the standpoint of a website, in the entire world. So this is by far the most popular one, and there's nothing that succeeds like success, and Google is successful, and have been successful for some time, in creating a search engine that works in a sense, and it's hard to use the word better because a lot of other search engines do things differently, but it is the one that seems to be most effective to the most people, and that's why it has such a great popularity. Now, when you get down underneath all that, what you really find out is that Google is an advertising company, and it is the largest advertising company in the world. So your searches are merely a byproduct of Google's real business, which is selling advertising. And we'll note that as we go along here, but almost everything you do in Google, in a Google search, will end up with some kind of a result that includes some kind of advertising. So this is something to understand. But understanding a search itself, searches is really an activity of finding relevant information in a background of noise. Now, this is kind of a graphic representation of noise. Noise is sort of randomly accumulated signals that, in this case, if this is a transcription of audio noise and a background, or what's called white noise, which means it's sort of a random background noise. But what we're doing when we're doing searches on a computer is we're attempting to find what we consider to be relevant, the information that we're seeking after, and we find that in this background of noise. Now, the noise doesn't necessarily have to be meaningless, random stuff like this. The noise that we're talking about here when we're doing Google searches or any kind of search is the irrelevant information, the information that we don't want, that we're not interested in the moment. We may change our mind and look at something that comes up because it catches our eye, but generally speaking, if we're looking for a specific piece of information, everything else that we find is not what we were looking for, and therefore we would call noise background noise or whatever. So what our job is when we're doing searches is to formulate a methodology that allows us to optimize our ability to distinguish between what is the relevant information that we're seeking and the background information or noise that we would like to ignore, or that we would like not to be there if we had the choice. And any overload of information can become noise. So if I'm looking at too much information at any given period of time, then that information essentially turns into noise. In our world today, if you drive down in most of the streets in larger cities of the United States or even in other countries, you're confronted with so much information in the form of signs and billboards and all sorts of things that generally speaking, we just ignore it all. We don't even focus on it unless we happen to, in our looking at all this information, happen to focus on something, and then we might catch our eye and actually read it. But I would guess that most of us, if we drive down a freeway, for example, could not tell, the average driver could not tell you any more than maybe even one, or if that, of any of the billboards they passed that day. They just simply wouldn't know it. However, in the advertising world, uh, every time someone drives past a billboard becomes an event that is measurable and is part of the ability of that company to make money and sell more advertising. So what Google does is they sort of saturate this whole uh, searching process with advertising, and at that point, anything you focus on is likely to satisfy one of the sponsors who's paid Google some money. So you just have to understand that and look through it and understand, and this is not a judgment, by the way, on the value of the tool, of searching tool of Google. It's just the reality of of the world that we live in. So part of what we're trying to do here is to create a method by which we can filter out, and that would be one term to use, filter out this background noise of an overload of information to focus in on those things that we're really interested in and what we're trying to find. Okay, so when we're talking about a search, and in our case, obviously, we're focusing on a genealogical search. So what are we talking about when we're talking about a genealogical search? What we need to know is a set of mechanical and analytical skills directed at finding information about our ancestors. Now, you can fill in the blank of ancestors with anything else you want to search for, but in our case, we're going to use the idea of searching for our ancestors using genealogical search. Now, there's two aspects to this. We call it the mechanical and the analytic. The mechanical aspect is simply typing. Your ability to key or keyboard is one of the mechanical skills that you need to learn. And your analytical skills are the thought process that you go through in doing searches. Now, the problem I had in conceptualizing this process and explaining it was that I would do the mechanical process was automatic. I learned how to type. One of the few things I learned in high school, by the way, was how to type. And as I've been going through my life, typing has been one of my basic skills, and I really don't have to think much about typing. I mainly have to think about what I'm thinking about, and typing just seems to happen as I think. But the analytical part of this is the real difficult one, because now I can basically use the computer as an extension of my thought process. And so I mechanically enter information, but I do that as I'm thinking about it. So I really don't sit down and think, oh, I am going to search for something and then go search for it. I just simply start typing the instant I think that I want to find out some particular piece of information. Okay, that may sound a little bit a roundabout way, but I think what you need to do is analyze what you do, how you do your searches, and go through the process of thinking about it. So the purpose here of this, of course, was, as I put in my title, was to increase your speed and increase your accuracy. Well, in order to do both, then you're going to have to increase both your analytical and your mechanical skills. So part of this whole process is also understanding and increasing your ability to guess how a record is indexed or cataloged. Now, why is that the case? And the case is we need to know a little bit more about how the internet is searched and how Google works in order for us to understand what we're trying to guess about. What it is that we're trying to find when we go out to search for information on the internet. Now, let me put this into a concrete term so you'll understand what I'm talking about in a little more, with a little bit more accuracy, or at least hopefully explain it a little better. So the idea here is, for example, let's say if I was looking for my great-grandfather, I wanted information about this person, a specific person, and my great-grandfather's name was Henry Tanner. So I would put in Henry Tanner, and then I would add whatever other search terms that I would guess would help me find him as opposed to every other Henry Tanner out there in the world. Okay, so that's two processes. One was my mechanical process of typing in the term Henry Tanner, and the second one was analytically thinking about those items that might have been cataloged or indexed with Henry Tanner that would help me to find him as an individual, as opposed to every other Henry, every other Tanner, and every other Henry Tanner that ever existed or could be on the internet. Okay, and then once we get to that point, we're going to get a lot of what I would consider to be noise, background noise. In other words, there's going to be a lot of things on the screen that are in addition to what you set out to look for initially. One of the most common complaints I have is that people say search for, like I just said about Henry Tanner, and then I say my Henry Tanner lived in Arizona, and I get Henry Tanners living all over the world. And the question is, why isn't the search engine, whether it be Google or some other search engine, but primarily, why am I getting so many responses? In its response to Henry Tanner, we'll find that we could get millions of responses. So we have a lot of background noise, in a sense, things that we'd have to wade through if we were trying to manually find out where we are. So what the process of searching on a computer is that we're trying to separate out enough, be articulate enough with the computer that we can and give it the terms that it needs, that the search engine needs to produce the information that we're actually looking for. Okay, hopefully that makes a little more sense. And also, now we come to the next step, and that is this stuff pops up on the screen, and we have to quickly evaluate the relevance of the newly acquired information. So once I do a search, then I get a whole bunch of results back on the computer screen, and I have to be able to look through them. So what does that mean? Well, it means I have to learn how to read quickly, and I have to learn how to search through a long list of results quickly to find out if there's anything on the screen that I am interested in looking at. And the faster I can do that is the faster I can search. And so that's what we go through. Okay, so what are some of the basic limitations? The things that limit us from doing fast searches on a computer or being efficient in this search process of finding the things that we want to when we're doing on a computer. A lot of times, for instance, I will see people sitting at a computer for a period of time, and they'll come and they'll express some frustration with their searches. I just cannot find anything about this particular topic. And then, of course, if what's it called, fresh eyes, but in other words, I could sit down and type in the same, or what they thought was the same exact search, and there's the answer. And the question is, okay, so what did you do differently than I did? Why couldn't I find this information, and all of a sudden you seem to be able to find it? Or what if you watch somebody else do that, then you may have that same question. So here's some of the limitations, of course. The first one is not overly obvious to some people, but to those of us who do searches all day long and spend hours and hours in front of a computer, we understand that one of the most basic limitations is the speed of our computer. Older computers can drive me to almost a distraction because they are so slow. I just can't I just can't use them anymore. And so what drives this, obviously, is that we have an increasing technology that increases the speed of our computers every time a new chipset comes out from Intel or from one of the other chip providers, and that creates an atmosphere, a technological atmosphere, where we keep expecting computers to get faster, and so as we get a chance to use a faster computer, we realize that our computer is really slow, so we want a faster one. So that's one of the basic limitations. The second limitation is obviously your speed of your connection to the internet. We started out with phone dial-up modems years ago. The rate was measured what was called a baud rate at the time, B-A-U-D, a baud rate, and the baud rates were measured in kilobits per second. In other words, thousands of characters per second. And today the rate is close to a terabyte in some networks where you can have extremely high. That's 1,000 gigabytes of information every second that can be transferred back, or hundreds or thousands of gigabytes. But the speed of your connection is still one of the limiting factors in your ability to do searches. As we go through this list, you'll see everything. Your keyboarding, mouse, or trackpad skills are also a contributing factor. Now, what happens here is by the time you formulate a desire or an interest in making a search, so you're saying, I want to search for my great-grandfather, like I'm using as this example here. Okay, so I'm out searching for my great-grandfather, but if I have to sit there and type in H-E-N-R-Y, in other words, if I'm hunting and picking out letters on the keyboard, or wondering how to use the mouse or where to put the information, or unfamiliar with the computer, and I have a slow connection and a slow computer, I can pretty well lose interest in the whole project before I ever get it done. And I may have forgotten why I was looking for this thing in the first place. So, it's really these particular situations are some of the basic things that slow us down. Now, this is probably the most crucial one, and that is your ability to process information from a screen. That means reading and comprehension skills, how fast you can look at the information that comes up on the computer before you actually realize that you have the answer to your question, or how long does it take you to determine that the information is not there and then start the search process over again. So these are all things that are come about. Now, how do these come about? Well, I can't solve the question of your speed of your computer or your connection to the internet. Those are a function of your desire and your economic condition, that whether or not you can afford it, or where you live, where there's a connection to the computer that's adequate. And we happen to live here in Provo, Utah, and we have what's called Google Fiber. So we have the fastest connection available in the United States today, outside of specialized connections between internal computers. So this one factor about our ability to do searches. The keyboarding or mouse skills and the ability to read and comprehension skills, those are things that are learned skills. If you've never done keyboarding, you have to go through the process of learning how to do it. You have to learn how to type. If you don't learn how to type, then your ability to do searches on the keyboard, on the computer, will be limited to the speed of your keyboarding skill. So these are just some of the basic factors. So we could go down through the issue of whether or not any of these particular skills are innate or whether they're learned. And so whether you have the ability to do it, the skill, or the intelligence, or the competence, or experience, or expertise, capability, all these are different issues that govern the speed at which you can do skills. But one thing I have learned over the years is that basic computer usage is a skill that can be learned. And it's really not governed by age or anything other than perhaps your coordination and internal coordination management ability, but most people can learn how to search effectively if they just simply practice and do it. The problem with this and any skill is that if you're not very good at it, then you have a tendency to become discouraged and think that you can't do it, and therefore it's self-fulfilling and you can't search. Or you avoid the problem because you think it's a painful process. So we really have to cope with this and realize that this is the reality. That the reality is that there are certain physical and educational background, ability, skill things that have to do. If you really want to know the difference here, is all you have to do is watch a younger person who has spent a considerable amount of time using a smartphone or a regular phone, keyboard on the phone with their thumbs. We call it, thumbing the smartphone. And watch somebody try to input. I was watching one of the students here at BYU. We were talking and she was taking notes, and she was keyboarding with her thumbs faster than I could probably keyboard on a regular computer. So, these are skills, and we have to recognize that that's one of the factors that either gives us more speed and ability in doing searching. But basically, searching is a learned skill. It's something that you can practice and get better at, and that's the whole point. The point here is to have an understanding of what you need to learn in order to increase your skill. And just simply using a computer constantly is one way to learn that skill. But it's like anything, you really need to have a little bit of background and understanding about what you're doing before the skill that you've learned really can take off and become proficient. Okay, so the question then is, the old question is like the violinist who's asked on his way, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And he says, practice, practice, and practice. The answer here is how you get to be proficient is practice, practice, practice. You just simply do it over and over again. And people who say, well, I wish I knew how to find things on the computer like you do. And I say, fine, all you have to do is spend 14 hours a day on the computer like I do, and perhaps you'd learn it. And most people are not going to do that. So, I mean, it's just a question of what you want to desire. So if you want to be a competitive bike person, sometimes some of my friends over the years have been near professional, and a couple of them into the professional category of cycling racers. And how do they do that? Well, they go, and my friends used to ride 100 miles a day. They get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they do 100 miles before breakfast, and then they'd go to work. So it's kind of thing where they made the effort, and they were able to learn the skill. I don't get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go out and ride a bicycle, but I often get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get on a computer and start using it all day. So that's how we get to the point where we can progress in becoming more and more persistent. It takes time, and it takes a lot of practice. Okay, but Google is essentially a tool for searching, and so there's some things you can learn that even if you haven't got the best keyboarding skills or the fastest reading skills or whatever, you can still become very proficient if you know some basic things about searching on the computer. And if you do have the additional skills that are necessary to be proficient, then those skills are far and above, will make you much better increase your ability to find what you're looking for. I might just add as an aside, being here in a university environment, I get a lot of people with some extraordinary skills that far beyond me. And what really is really interesting to me is to sit down to one of these people who have just what I would call extraordinary mechanical skills, and watch them enter information into the computer. Over the years as an attorney, I had a lot of legal assistants whose keyboarding skills were so far superior to mine that they could actually type faster than I could speak, and they could take down what I was saying as I was speaking, and that to me is just beyond comprehension. So, there's always room to become better in this world. Let's look a little bit at Google. First of all, Google has and tries to tell you how it works. They love to tell about themselves, except in some cases. I mean, there's some things they never say, but a lot of the things about what they're doing and what they're trying to do are being published constantly all day long. And there is a website called Google Inside Search. So if you want to go there, you just type in Google Inside Search on any Google, and it will take you right to this website. And this one explains in pretty good detail how searching works and gives you a lot of little shortcuts and tools that you can use to do searches on Google. A lot of things that you couldn't, unexpected bonuses of knowing a lot about the program are that you can find things that quickly that you didn't know you could find previously. So it helps to know how Google works. This really does. It really helps to know what the program does. So first of all, you have to understand that there are over 60 trillion pages of information out there that's being searched by Google. This number goes up, by the way, and if you were watching this a year or two down the road, that number could be astronomically higher by the time just a few years pass, because just a couple of years ago there was nothing close to that number of pages of information out on the internet. So Google follows the links. These are the URL links, the addresses, from page to page with programs that are called web crawlers or spiders or web spiders. And what these programs do is they go from page to page and they basically index, they acquire the information that's on all of these different pages around the internet. And then they sort those pages. They actually go through, they have huge computer banks of huge powerful computers that sort those pages and create an index, if you will, of the entire internet. And they do that by the content of the web pages, the number of times that they're accessed, and other factors. So you get them sorted out by this sort of general index of subjects and headings and interests and words. And then in addition to that, they create a hierarchy based on the number of times that any particular page has been accessed. And then there's other factors that they look at, desirability, relevance, all these kinds of things. Anyway, they put that into a series of commands that works through their search engine, filters, if you will. We call them algorithms. They're procedures that a computer uses to make a decision. So in this case, Google has created this, and then all this becomes an index. So what you're really searching when you search in Google is you're trying to identify, as I said earlier, those terms that have been indexed by Google. So it's not that you're randomly picking news out of, terms out of the air or out of your imagination. Your success in searching will be directly dependent on your ability to guess what it was that Google used as the index terms. So part of the process here of learning this, and it can be learned fairly rapidly if you are willing to recognize the fact that you need to learn, and that is if you practice doing searches, then you should be able to, over a period of time, learn what terms it is that you select that will best produce the information that you're trying to find. So if you think about it for a while and you say, okay, I'm looking for Henry Tanner, but I'm looking for everything. Maybe if I put in his middle name, Henry Martin Tanner, how many people would would have put in his full name? Would Google have included his full name in any information that they collected about him? What other terms could I put in? And so those are kind of things that you either consciously or unconsciously would have to go through in order to determine to make your search more accurate using Google. So what appears first and what comes up first with Google? Okay, so this is now we're getting down to suppose that I am successful in making a search. So what comes out as number one item on my search from my search engine? The first thing is the most popular search responses. So if I am looking for my ancestor and no one has ever looked for him, or almost no one has ever looked for this person before, it's going to be harder for Google to push that up to the first response than if you look for somebody like my great-grandfather, whose searches have been made hundreds and thousands of times. Why? Well, because he has a lot of descendants, and it's likely that a lot of people have searched for him over the years. So the more popular a term is, and then this is true about anything that's popular. So getting into the problem, and the problem we face, of course, on an aside here in genealogy, is that very few of the things that we're searching for are actually going to be popular. The fact that we're searching for relatives back in the 1700s does not mean that anybody's really looking for that a lot. And so forcing those to the top of a search are going to be more of a challenge than if we were looking for contemporary movie stars or political issues or things like that. And the second thing that you're going to appear most frequently is targeted advertising. So whether you like it or not, using Google, you're going to be given advertising first. And so anything that you're talking about, any website that comes up, if there's any kind of a commercial connection with anybody that's paying Google for advertising, it will come up first. So you need to understand that you're not just searching blindly out there. What you're really searching is Google's index. You're actually trying to guess what are the terms that Google has incorporated in its search engine that might produce the results that you're looking for. And in order to do that, you really have to acquire this ability to guess the terms that used in Google. So in a sense, if I or anyone else appears to be more efficient, although our ability to search may be limited by our mechanical abilities or our ability to read or to comprehend quickly, the real limiting factor here is whether we're good guessers, whether we've got enough experience guessing how Google would index something to come up with the information we're looking for. And though this makes it really difficult, of course, if you're trying to find out information about something you know absolutely nothing about. So if I started getting into molecular biology, for example, I would have to learn what the search terms were, what the index terms were, before I would be successful in finding out any relevant information about a subject I knew very little about. So the better you guess, the more accurate you become. And that comes as a result of doing it, of actually doing Google searches. And one thing that's important to understand about doing searches is you have to ask the same question in different ways repeatedly, because when you're first starting, you really do have to rephrase the question over and over again. And maybe I'm a little bit conditioned because of my legal background. It's not unusual that I'd be in court, I'll ask a question and the other attorney will object to my question on a whole long list of legal reasons that the question's objectionable, and the judge will say, granted, the objection is granted, and he'll say, Mr. Tanner, please rephrase or redo your question. So then I will have to try to ask the question in a way that can't be objected by the other side, or that the other attorney doesn't object to, and that isn't objectionable to the court. Well, it's that kind of process is in a sense what we're trying to do with Google. we're going to keep asking the questions on Google until we get through into their index and we find what it is we're looking for. So the question I ask is, what would be the most important words or phrases used on the page I'm searching for? So I have to imagine that someone out there in the world has written a page about my great-grandfather, for example. And then I have to imagine, what are some of the words that if they were writing about my great-grandfather, would they use on that page? And those become my Google search terms. And they are my guess at the words that Google has indexed from that particular page that I'm looking for. So the next question is in thinking about that, is how do I limit the number of responses to the ones that I want as opposed to what Google wants, or what is simply like a fishing expedition where I have no idea what I want and I'm not even sure. So before I even get started with this process, I have to be able to formulate a question and analyze the information that I'm searching for and put it into a concrete search term. Now, it could take 10 seconds, could take a day, it may take us a long time to learn, but it may just take one glance if you happen to have experience in that particular type of search. Okay, so now it's time to get some examples. Talked a lot about kind of theory and background of how we do searches on Google or online, but let's look. So if I search for my ancestor's name, what will happen? Okay, that's the question. So here I'm going to do. And the real answer is, how many people out there have the same or very similar name? And so that's what the question is going to be. So here's the question. So I'm going to search for my grandfather using his full name, Henry Martin Tanner. And I do that. And here's the search. And I end up with 740,000 results in a little less than half a second. Okay. Your results will vary, as they say. And as a matter of fact, if I keep doing this search over and over again, the more I do it, if I even click on one results, the number of results will start changing with Google. So Google, in a sense, learns from your searches and the pattern of your searches what you're looking for. And so it begins to recognize that perhaps this search has been done before, and when people did this search before, or when you did this search before, you clicked on certain websites, and so those websites start to come up near the top of your search. Interestingly, Google does record every single search ever made. So they have this huge, almost infinitely large database full of searches that they can compare every search to. So it's almost unlikely in a lot of cases that you are searching for anything unique that hasn't been searched for by Google many times. Okay. And an interesting thing is that Google only gives you about a half a second of search time. Now, I've had people argue with me and they say, well, I see that Google gives more searches. Well, the answer is today, on the average, almost every search I look at comes in at just around a half a second. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't more results. It just means that Google turns off the search engine after half a second. You get half a second of Google's time every time you do a search. This is kind of the way to paraphrase that. So yes, you might get different results if you kept doing the search over. And so that's another key, is that one Google search doesn't prove anything. You can just keep doing it over and over again. And as you do that, you'll either get tired, but the computer won't get tired, but it will start giving you different, or it may give you the same results over and over again, in which case you'll be compelled to do a different search. Okay. Now let's think about what's happened when I did this. So what I did, how long did it take me to think of the search terms? That's the first thing. So if I have to go through the process of wondering what I'm going to search for, that's really what gobbled up all the time. It wasn't the computer and waiting for the response from the network. It was the time I took to come up with the search terms, and then and enter those search terms into the computer and on the network. So then the next question is, how helpful are my results? And now I've got 740,000 results on my great-grandfather, Henry Tanner. So how helpful is that to me? Well, unless the first few are very helpful, I probably am not going to go look through all 740,000 results. So it really is much more than I'll ever want to look at. So the next question is, how do I get better results? What do I do to focus my search so that I can actually get what I'm looking for? Okay, so the answer here is I can add some terms. And in this case, I can say, put Henry Martin Tanner in quotes. Using the quotation marks, I tell Google that I want just Henry Martin Tanner. I don't want every Henry, I don't want every Martin, and I don't want every Tanner. What else could I do? I could say Henry Martin Tanner in quotes and as the term Arizona. That would be a term that I'm guessing would be on the same page as anything written about my great-grandfather, because he lived in Arizona. And if they talked about Henry Martin Tanner, they'd probably say Arizona something, or lived in Arizona, or tell about where he lived. And so then I could also add in pioneer, because he was a pioneer, meaning he was one of the early settlers of Arizona, and in fact arrived in northern Arizona in 1877, which, by the way, is very early for Arizona. And so that might increase it. So let's see what happens here. So here I go back, and this time I type in Henry Martin Tanner in quotes, and I put Arizona Pioneer after it, and I click, and I get 371 results. Okay, that's a big drop from 740,000 or whatever. So what we've got here is still half a second, by the way. It seems to be around the half a second number. But this is more manageable, and the chances are that the first references I have are the ones I'm looking for, as information I'm looking for about this particular person or subject. So my improving my ability to work with a Google search will depend to a great extent on my ability to sort of imagine what it is that someone has put out there about that person or that subject. So this time I'm searching for Henry Martin Tanner, and I'm using just Arizona. So every time I search with a different set of terms, I get a different results. Obviously here, because now I've eliminated the word pioneer, which makes the search more specific, I start moving the other way, and I'm going 0.6 of a second here, and I get over 1,000 results. So at some point in time, I'm no longer going to look at all of those results. I'm simply just going to look at the first few and decide if they found it, and then do another search with the hope that I can force the information that I'm actually looking for to the top of the list. So important to remember this, what I said just a moment ago, is that Google stores all your searches. So when you start to search for something that you've searched for previously, it will simply produce the same information that it gave you the first time. So they just circumvent the whole process by saying, okay, oh, this is James Tanner, and he is typing in Henry Martin Tanner, and so he must want this, and so they will kick in the information that I found previously. And then Google uses programs that try to predict what it is you're looking for. So as you use the computer over and over again, your searches get more and more efficient, because Google starts learning what it is you're looking for. So the second I start typing a part of a website, for example, if I'm putting in an address of a website, Google will automatically supply me with options that I can just simply hit a return character and enter the entire option that they've offered to me. So in most of the cases, for example, if I'm typing things which I type all the time, like family search, I don't have to go look for family search. All I have to do is type the letter F. And once I type F in, because I do that so frequently, Google supposes that I'm looking for family search and enters family search in the entire search bar. So I have familysearch.org, I hit enter. So I type F and hit enter, which I can do in like half a second. And Google will then take me to the family search website almost 100% of the time. Now, every time I changed my search, if I started looking up some other website that started with an F, for example, like Facebook, if I started all of a sudden looking for Facebook every day instead of family search, then the computer would start to learn that I was looking for Facebook, and so when I typed F, it would come up with Facebook rather than family search. And guess what? Sometimes they're right. Sometimes Google can guess what it is you're looking for. So over the years, I've noticed that as I type in search terms, that sometimes Google will give me the entire search term after one or two keystrokes, and I'll say, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. You know, but it's all based on what I've looked for previously and what it's guessing that I would want to look for in the future. Okay, here's the problem. You've got to be really careful. You usually get what you search for. And if you make a mistake, you could end up with some material that's totally undesirable, something that you really, really did not want to find. The other thing you need to understand is that the first few entries are likely going to try to sell you something. So here's my Henry Martin Tanner Arizona Pioneer search, and the first entries are all Amazon because they're trying to sell me a book. And so this is what Google does, and you just have to recognize that and look down to see what the addresses are of the work before you get down to the one. In this case, every one of the first ones are all on Amazon, and I know I'm not going to find any information about my ancestors on Amazon unless I buy the book or read a book or whatever. Now, when we get to this point, I get people who have a lot of elaborate schemes for increasing your ability to do searches on Google. And they're all kind of summarized under the terminology of what's called a Boolean search. Boole was a mathematician, and he came up with certain mathematical operators or symbols that were used in primarily in logic, but searching is basically a logical activity. But so what are the search operators? And my question is, they have lots of these. There are pages of them. They are, they're catalogs of search operators. There's some that are the more common ones, all mathematical ones, greater than, less than, equal to, not equal to, all these different kinds of operators. But in my experience, they add complexity, not speed. Now, here is the question, would you rather do this quickly, or would you rather do it with increased accuracy? And so that really is the basis. And you have to make both, because in a lot of cases, increasing your accuracy beyond a certain point requires you to increase the complexity of your searches, which will then decrease your speed. So we really are looking at trying to optimize both speed and accuracy. And then the question is, do they add accuracy? Can you find something using all your Boolean algebraic terms and all of your different shortcuts and operators and things that you've developed that I can't find by doing searches over and over again? And so what I suggest is, what happens is, if you're using these kinds, and by the way, Google incorporates most of the common operators in their regular searches. So when I put Henry Martin Tanner in quotes, that operator, and I put the word Arizona, Google adds the word and in their search. I don't have to put Henry Martin Tanner and Arizona, but because I can just leave that out, because Google's already assumed that I'm looking for pages that have both of those words, but the term Henry Martin Tanner and the word Arizona. And or, you can add an or, um, but it also means the same thing. So you're searching, if you're looking for Henry Martin Tanner or Arizona, what you're going to get is all of the Henry Martin Tanner entries and all the Arizona entries, which is probably not what you want. But you can construct using the word or, and you can add a dash for not, like minus, using it in the sense of minus. In this case, if I'm looking for Henry Tanner, I can put minus painter, because there was a painter by the name of Henry Tanner who was very famous. So that would be one way to get around that. But what I've found is more efficient is to look for synonyms. In other words, go out there and think of all of the words that mean the same thing, that of the word that you're searching for, or the words that you're searching for, and use those as search times. But here's what I would say. By the time you construct a formal search, even if you're pretty efficient at it, you can make, or I can make, dozens of variation searches. So I can sit there in a matter of a few seconds or a minute or two, I can type in 10 or as many as 15 different Google searches while you're sitting there trying to think of a formula that would produce what we're looking for. And probably, as my experience indicates, that searching over and over again not only increases your speed, it increases your accuracy. And so you're certainly welcome to use all the Boolean algebraic terms, all of the specialized search terms that are built into Google. But they often do not take the place of simply looking for the terms over and over again over a short period of time. All I can say is that I usually find what I look for. So it's not a matter of me being unique. It's not something that I can do that no one else can do. It's just that, if I was a baseball player and I was telling you how to hit the ball with a bat, I would have to say, if I do this, I do better in hitting the ball. And the same thing here with searching on Google. So next thing you do is you use the searched results to focus your search. So once you get search results, you say, oh, well, this is telling me that what Google is seeing here is this, where I want this. So if I just change this word, I should find what I'm looking for, rather than what Google's produced. And in this case, I entered the word genealogy, which is very overly broad, and I got 193 million results in a little bit less than half a second. Okay, so genealogy is certainly not an efficient search term, because with 193 million results, there's not a whole lot I can do with that. So the question, of course, you ask yourself is, what am I actually looking for? What is it I'm trying to find? Am I looking for genealogy in general, or am I looking for something specific? Okay, but what you have here also is a thing called Google's advanced search pages. Google has this whole outline of ways helping you to organize what it is you're looking for in a very more specific way. And this is sort of based on some assumptions that were early on developed in the Boolean algebraic and logical search term type stuff, where not greater than, less than includes, that kind of thing. And so this is where you can get into detailed kinds of searches. If you're unfamiliar with searching, doing an advanced search will sometimes help you understand the kinds of things that you need to put in your searches to find the information you're looking for. So whenever you're searching, you have to keep in mind what it is you're really looking for. What is it you're really trying to find? Now, if I'm just generally looking for information about my great-grandfather, then Henry Martin Tanner might be enough. But if I wanted to know about his birth, I might put in the term genealogy, birth. I might put in other terms that would help me focus in on the exact information that I was searching for. And by the way, there are advanced Google operators for web searches. There's a whole long list of them, and you can go to advanced operators for web search and type in Google and the words advanced operators for web search, and you'll find this page that has all sorts of very complex, in a sense, some of them, and or simple things that you can add to your searches to increase your focus and your ability to find information in a specific website, or things that are all just text or other things. And there's a whole long list of different advanced operators for web search. And again, what you're doing here, and you need to realize this, is you're trading the complexity for speed. Now, some people can internalize all these, and in which case they become part of their repertoire, their ability to make searches. And if they are, then that's good. Okay. So when you're searching, you need to recognize your limitations, your own personal limitations. But on the other hand, you don't need to necessarily always need to trade accuracy for speed. Speed is only one of the factors that is helpful in doing online searches. What we would like to have more than speed is accuracy. So the fact that you're not as fast as I am is just so what. But the fact that you're more accurate than I am is, I would like to know why you are more accurate than I am. So the real key down here on everything is to keep searching and keep looking over and over again, because as you search, you will get better at it. It's just the kind of thing that you learn. Okay, well, thanks for watching today. And I'd like to remind you we're here at the Brigham Young University Family History Library, and that these webinars are being recorded and put onto the BYU Family History Library website. And once again, we'd like to invite you to subscribe to our website. Thank you again for watching.
Thank you very much, James, for the wonderful webinar. We'd like to remind everybody that at our website at the bottom of the page here, you can go and see all of our past webinars that we've done this year, and also you can see our upcoming schedule for the webinars this month. We will hope to see you next time. Thank you. Bye.